Hey guys, just here today because I want to talk about I want to talk about 5 things that I've been through that have really changed my life. They're not all positive. I kind of feel like I'm not trying to be negative or anything, but sometimes when you've gone through a lot, it's hard to find positive memories because they're kind of like overshadowed by a lot of bullshit. Doesn't make you a negative person, just it's like really actually someone's like, what's your favorite part of your childhood? And you're just like, actually, I just remembered I got lost at Disney World one time. That was pretty funny. But anyways, that did not impact my life. So yeah, I just want to talk about the 5 things that impacted my life the most and how I dealt with it. So in no order, just I guess chronologically. When I was a kid, I grew up like in a really sexual environment, and it was really unhealthy. And there was a lot of abuse going on, a lot of incest, and um, abuse from my mom's boyfriends and stuff like that. And um, when I was a kid, I had my mother's boyfriend molest me, and he would buy video games and make me play them, and then he would do his thing, and he would do his thing to me. And then, yeah, that really, because I remember the thing that impacted me the most was the fact that when I told my mother, there was no real response. There was no like, you know, oh my God, we got to rush you to therapy, or we got to, oh my God, this must be so traumatic for you, and or whatever. There was no follow up. There was no talk about it really, and that pretty much set the foundation for how my relationships would go in my life. It was pretty bad, and there was a lot of kind of sexual things like before that, um, and then skip a shit ton of years because there's lots of in between then and university that we could talk about in other videos. But for now, another video or another situation I would say like really impacted me would be going to university because I grew up like a bookworm. I always loved reading. I loved homework. I loved school. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to do all that kind of stuff. Love school. Then I got to university and realized it was just an extension of high school, even though I thought I just escaped the bullshit of high school, and now I'm in university, and it's just like, I think I expected everyone to be more mature, but it was just not that way. That was really difficult. I found it's like friendships and relationships in university was really difficult. I never, like, I connected with people on a surface level, but never really let anybody in, and I never really fit into a particular group or anything like that, and that was really hard. Um, the biggest moment in university for me was when I decided to leave because I decided that my life was my own and I wasn't going to be there for somebody else. I wasn't going to sit there and get myself into more and more debt for somebody else's dream, and I wasn't going to sacrifice something I didn't want to do into a career I didn't want to do for the rest of my life, and I couldn't picture myself doing. So I left, and like everyone around me was like, "What?" And I did it, and it's pretty great. And so that was like a huge thing for me that was the beginning of me owning my life. I think like slowly I was just like, you know. Um, and then fast forward about 5 6 years until 2 years ago, when my father passed away, and that would definitely be one of the hugest things that impacted my life. My father was never, physically in my life for the past few years. He was all growing up until I was maybe about like 14, and then I think it became a little bit of a strenuous relationship because he didn't know how to be a dad to a teenage daughter, which is like, who the hell knows how to raise a teenage daughter? Um, but he was, dealing with his own issues and his alcoholism and his own past and his own stuff. And I had no idea because I didn't realize the effect that had on me until I started to do Al-Anon, and I started to read about it, and I started to try and like dismantle this codependency that I was living and breathing in every relationship. But when my dad died, it kind of set me free from my entire family. My family wasn't involved in my dad at all. Like my mom and my dad had separated from when I was young, so he was never involved in my family. But my brother and my sister had a different father, so this kind of fell entirely on my lap, and I had to plan a funeral, and I had to go through probate lawyers and law and like all this paperwork and like a year and a half of this shit. And like my father was homeless. It wasn't like he just died with all these assets, or he died with all this stuff, and it was so easy, and he had all these friends. It was like I was planning a funeral for somebody who I didn't even know who the hell was going to show up except for myself. And then what do you bring to a funeral? Because I only had pictures of us from when we were kids. Like, it was really, really bad. And I'll talk more about my dad's death in another video, because that's a whole fucking thing right there. That was really traumatic and insane. Some of you already know, some of you don't really, but I'll do a video on that. There's actually another video explaining that on my YouTube. Anyways, yeah, it's that was pretty fucked. But that was like, I feel like that was, for me, it was like the chains had been lifted. Um, and I finally was able to separate from my family. I think if it wasn't for my dad's death, I still would have been involved in all of that shit. After my dad's death, so that was 2 years ago, and I went through the absolute hell of all hells for the last 2 years. It was the worst. Um, and back in May, I lived with my boyfriend a few blocks down, and we decided we needed a bigger place because I wanted a dog, and we needed an office and all this kind of stuff. So, and again, like, distracting ourselves. So we wanted a bigger place, so we got this place, and that was in May. And 2 weeks after we moved here, I was sitting on the balcony doing some work or smoking a joint. I don't know what I was doing, but I was on the balcony looking out, and somebody above me jumped off and killed themselves. And I saw the whole thing, and I saw his body land, and I heard it, and I saw it, and it was only a few floors down, so it was very close to me. And it was so fucked. Like, we think about this all the time. You know, we've seen 13 Reasons Why. You know, we've heard about suicide. We've heard about people jumping from trains. We've, heard about bodies falling off buildings and stuff. But when you actually see it happening and hear it happening and are the person that's calling 911, it's unbelievably traumatic. And the thing for me was that was a huge wake-up call, because that's something that I'd been dealing with. Like, I have PTSD and anxiety, depression, and another diagnosis I'm not ready to talk about. But with that comes a suicidal ideation, which is an obsession with suicide and planning it and living and breathing it, which I do every single fucking day of my life, which is really exhausting. But to actually see it happen in front of me was like a wake-up call. It was like, this is what you've been thinking about. This is what really happens. Like, do you really want this? And that's the day that I walked into CAMH emergency, and I said, if I don't get help right now, I'm going to kill myself, because I'm so broken. So from there, I went into an intensive psychological program through CAMH and went on medication, which I didn't want to do, but it saved my life, and I'm glad I was a little bit more open-minded. And yeah, that was really fucked up. And it's funny, because once I started going to CAMH to deal with that suicide, I've never talked about the way that suicide impacted me, only that it was a catalyst for getting me help, which I'm so grateful for. That, how sad that is that somebody lost their life, but it also, like, started mine, which is weird. And on a really positive note, to end this, the most recent biggest impact of my life was the fact that I just had my first anniversary with my boyfriend Xana. And the reason why it's such an impact is not because I've never had a 1 year anniversary before, but because this one was so meaningful. Because I've never had a healthy relationship like this before. I've never had something that was so supportive and so healthy and so real and so raw and intimate and honest and trusting, and we grow with each other, and we call each other on our shit, and we love each other, and we support each other, and he sees me for who I am, and he loves me for everything that I am, and every fucked up thing and every piece of baggage, and he sees everything for the best. And it's been the most liberating thing of my life, because when you live your whole life getting a certain message, and then all of a sudden somebody shows you something different, it's amazing. But I also know that I would have never attracted him to my life if I hadn't have already started to do the work, because there's a difference between, looking for something to fulfill that hole, and that's where codependency comes in, and looking for someone to, fulfill that need and to make you feel loved, rather than you doing the work to show yourself how you're loved and to show your self-worth, and then attracting somebody who sees that you're doing that, if that makes sense. And that's what I feel like I did, is I feel like I really, over the last 2 years, since my dad's death is when I've worked so fucking hard on myself, and every little baggage, everything that I ever was doing, every shit personality trait that I had, every piece of anger, you know, forgiving people that have wronged me, forgiving myself for wronging other people. I think that it's my relationship with Xana right now has been an embodiment of all of that, because it's the healthiest, most real, sacred thing that I've ever felt in my life. So yeah, I mean, I'll go into more of those like things in different videos, but I just really wanted to touch on some 5 major things that's gone on the last year. So thanks for watching. I would love, honestly, love to know your 5 things. So you tell me your 5 things that have impacted you. Absolutely shitty things, amazing things, things that are really mediocre, like a recipe. It could be like anything that's really just like, you had an aha moment, or you had an epiphany, or something that changed your life. And I really want to hear about that, because maybe you telling me your stories, I'll help, it'll help me see different things in my life that I could be grateful for. And hopefully you can hear things in my story that maybe resonate with you. So yeah, just let me know. Thanks. I don't know what that was. Thanks.